जी, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, welcome to this IPSOS webinar. I'm really grateful for all the participants and the presenters to spare their time this evening. And I hope you find this webinar useful for your um, uh, business decision making. I'm happy that we are joined by Arif Anis. He would be the moderator for this webinar. I consider Arif to be pride for Pakistanis. He is based in UK and he has been named among the 100 most influential trailblazers in Europe, as Power 100 British Parliamentary Review has revealed in its 2018 edition. He has been author of a book, I Am Possible, Follow Your Dreams, and also the co-author of Made in Crisis. He has been keynote speaker and executive coach for more than 20 years in delivering transformational results, uplifting lives, and impacting people, policies, and narratives. He has been speaking and contributed to many global universities. As an international human capital expert, Anis has coached top coaches, corporate leaders, heads of states, movie stars, and many CEOs. Anis has also served as an economic senator at the European Economic Senate. So I hand over the floor to Arif, please.
Thank you very much, Babar. Thanks for your humbling introduction and your kind words. So I welcome you all to Reopening Business, Vital Insights for Effective Planning in Post-COVID-19 Era. This webinar is being hosted by IPSOS Pakistan, and IPSOS, as you are aware, is a multinational marketing research agency that brings the latest insights to many users all over the world. This one is being hosted by IPSOS Pakistan. So, as we all are aware, in the last 6 months, the life has been bit off the track due to the coronavirus pandemic that struck in the early year, January, February 2020. This particular pandemic caused a huge turmoil in the industry. There was a bloodbath at the high streets, at the financial markets. Trillions of dollars were lost, and almost the entire world underwent a lockdown that lasted for months. Right now, when we are in September, we are looking at the silver lining. When the pandemic is receding in certain parts of the world, and Pakistan has been fortunate enough to be spearheading that curve. While in the UK right now, we are experiencing 4,500 cases per day, and in France, surpassing 11,000 cases per day. In Pakistan, the cases are in hundreds, and mortality rate is way less. Now in Pakistan, we are talking about getting back to business, and IPSOS conducted several researches in this particular domain, and this particular webinar is bringing some of the vital people who are heading insights and market intelligence at some of the leading multinational companies in Pakistan. So we'll be listening to their vital insights, how they forecast on back to business scenario, the reopening of business in Pakistan, and what are the vital takeaways from today's webinar, which you, the listeners and the viewers and the users, can put into practice in their businesses to take a big advantage. So we'll be keeping it interactive. However, I would be giving you some of quick, I would say, rules of the webinar, which are, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in chat box, which is available on the screen. Please don't forget to mention who is asking and from whom. Presenters will try their best to answer your queries during the session. If due to shortage of time they couldn't, we will make sure to share the answers to your query after the webinar via email. Session will be recorded. If anyone wants to share it afterwards, you're most welcome to do that. Participants will be muted throughout the sessions. Every presenter will have 8 to 10 minutes to present the insights and conclude the topic, and presenters should call for the next slide when they want to proceed ahead. Along with this, I will quickly mention those who are joining us today. We'll have MD IPSOS Pakistan to officially welcome you and share those insights recently found out by IPSOS. We have Dr. Hafiz A Pasha. We hope he's going to join us, the former finance minister of Pakistan. He is unwell today, unfortunately. We just got the message, but we were hoping that he would be able to join us at his turn. Then we have Ayesha Athar. She is head of consumer market intelligence from Unilever, Pakistan. Kamil Yousuf, head of insights from PepsiCo, Pakistan. Shayan Khaliq is head of consumer insights and data monetization from Jazz. And then we have an expert panel at the end of this particular session. So while we plan to proceed, let's invite our very dear friend Abdul Sattar Babar, who is MD of IPSOS Pakistan. He's founding managing director of IPSOS, a very experienced strategic marketing and business intelligence specialist who worked in various senior local and regional roles, mentioning Sanovet, British American Tobacco, and Aftab Associates. Prior to launch of MEMRB Pakistan in 2006, he has spearheaded many pan-industry initiatives in Pakistan, like establishment of socioeconomic classification, which is called SEC, television audience measurement, TAM, and consumer multimedia index, which is CMI, and others. So let's listen to Abdul Sattar Babar on his latest insights, which he would reveal through the IPSOS Pakistan research and findings. And we are very much looking forward to getting back to business. So over to Abdul Sattar Babar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arif. And all the audience might have seen and they have heard a lot about the pandemic, its consequences and everything. But here I would like to say that let's be very clear. The consequences of the current pandemic on society and markets are far from being fully known. The need for fresh information is extremely high in a period like the one we are living through. This is illustrated by a recent study by MIT that actually told us that the changing behavior in the pandemic have had a huge impact on artificial intelligence. So now we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has accompanied by a transformation of our habits, sudden changes in our behavior as brutal and as global as the expansion of the coronavirus itself. And we are in a world where information is abundant and where the problem is to avoid being drowned in the continuous flow of new ideas, new information, new news. And much of this problem is tackled through AI. One of Amazon's greatest successes is that it has been able to limit this situation of hyper choice thanks to AI. And this is how it can offer its customers not tens of millions of products from our 2.5 million different partner companies, but to focus instead on those the customer is most likely to purchase. And similarly, in fact, targeted advertisements are only the most visible layer of much more complex and wide-ranging system. AI is used in online retail to, among its other things, automatically detect fraud, forecast stocks, assign a price to product locations on pages, and know if paying such a price is profitable or not. And all this is based on machine learning. Artificial intelligence decisions rely on the idea that the tomorrow will be more or less likely the same yesterday. And AI is able to detect trends and adapt to them, but only to a certain extent. When the COVID-19 crisis hit, there was no precedent. The day after tomorrow came immediately after AI. Purchasing habits were turned upside down, and total consumption slowed down very sharply. Such changes could not be tackled by machines. It took massive human intervention to cope with such brutal change. And this crisis shows us that given our current technologies, complete automation is not possible. A distinction should have been between the three situations. The first, where the complete automation is indeed an option. This is what happens in an assembly plant, which can be completely operated by robots and computers. The second case is when we have to manage an unknown whose properties and characteristics we know. And is it in this area that AI is very, very useful? Finally, there are areas where we do not know what we do not know. And here AI is for the moment powerless and unable to react properly. It is important to be able to distinguish between these two last cases I just mentioned. A thought experiment illustrated the difference between these two types of unknowns. Let's take two random adult people, A and B, from the population and measure their size and wealth. Suppose the sum of their size is 3.5 meters and the sum of their wealth is 35 million euros. The most likely situation is that the sizes both approaches the average, that is 1.75 meter. But if you consider the wealth, on the other hand, it is very unlikely that one has 17.5 million euros and other has the same amount. AI is very efficient in dealing with unknowns of the size type, but not efficient for the unknowns of the wealth type. Mathematically, we speak respectively of normal law and power law. Situations of the wealth type are much less controllable because knowing the average over hundreds of experiments may not provide any information on future events. And the typical example is this particular pandemic. The average number of victims of the last 12 pandemics tells you absolutely nothing about the number of victims of the next pandemic. In this context, producing reliable, accessible, fresh data in an effective way is extremely important. And I hope that this webinar does help participants draw strategic learning from the fresh data we all present today. Most of this data was gathered in the last week of July, just before Eid in Pakistan, while some of the numbers they refer to August and September also. So coming back to what actually we have seen that and we have started this monitoring right in the beginning of the pandemic across the world. And in fact, our first wave data collection that was completed before the first case was identified in Pakistan in Karachi. At that level, the awareness level of the Pakistani, it was just 70% almost about how much they know about this. But then we followed up that the same question afterwards throughout these months. And what we can see that awareness among the public was very high in April, but now it's getting stagnant. So now it seems to be settling at about 86%, which is okay. But when it comes to, and we also learned a lot that many of the people they believe that Twitter is very important or Facebook is very important. Here are the next slide, and here you can see the 3 and 4 Pakistani they find local news channels to be most trustworthy source of information on COVID-19, followed by religious places. Yes, it's very important. So if we would like to communicate with these people, we need to be mindful that the social media, it does help some part of the Pakistan, but it does not the most of the Pakistanis. And now we can see that the trend has been not very different since in May to the latest information what we got in August. Next slide. But irony is that while the awareness level about the coronavirus in Pakistan is staying the same about 86%, but there is a now very clear decline in the public concerns about themselves, their family members, and community. And in fact, the concerns are ever lowest level since February. So that is, and we know in February there was only one case reported in Pakistan, while now we have active cases are about 6,000. But still, the level of concern that is actually making us, I would say, complacent about the threat. And this is what is needed from the government and the authorities to keep communicating that the threat is not over. And I'm glad that our NCOC, National Control and Command and Operation Center, they are actually devising new communication strategies, and we have been very much in touch with the concerned authorities in WHO and other bodies while we have been communicating and the feedback from the masses in Pakistan. And next slide. And when we started checking with the parents in Pakistan that in June, that if how comfortable they are sending their children to school, a very overwhelming majority from 80%, I mean, they said no, we cannot send. And mind it, that was the peak period when the number of deaths, they were on the rise, and every next day, we were getting more deaths, more cases. But now see how it has drastically reduced to only 11%. So people are now more comfortable, and you can see the females are even more comfortable sending their children to schools. Maybe they are now quite sick of having children all the time around at homes, and that the trend is everywhere. So, and we have been releasing that information to the masses, to the public media and the authorities. And now we're glad that government actually now they have announced the reopening of the schools in gradual manners. Next slide. Now, the good thing is that about 4 and 5 Pakistani now they have been completely they able to resume their business and employment activities. If they're student, if they are they are working, and they are retailers, they are shopkeepers, they are transporters, they have resumed their activities. And now we can see the wheel of economy is actually is going up. Next slide. Here I would just like to share a few glimpses of this is what we call Global Consumer Confidence Index. If you write down this and search and Google it, you will find that there's a history behind this index. It has been done since last more than 20 years in about 30 markets of the world, and it actually combines the feelings of the respondents into what they are feeling now, what are their sentiment about the investments, what is their expectations about the future in their country, and what is their feel about the job. So asking all these questions about 13, we compute the national index. So I will share the numbers with you, but before sharing that number, I would share with you that the latest information from the Pakistani is what is the most worrying issue for them. And you can see, despite all the I would say the fatalities and the destruction happened due to the coronavirus, you can see the unemployment still seems to be the most worrying issue. And coronavirus, it came first time only in this way, of course, but increase in inflation. So put together, you can clearly see that the top two concerns, they are actually unemployment and increase in inflation. And if you want, you can also combine the below one, which is increasing poverty. That is also one of the important concern. We had been asking our respondents, and we have been tracking them since last year, that what is the likelihood of losing their job in next 6 months. So we can see that it was 60%, which is again very high as compared to the previous years, but it has further actually gone up in June. So people who are likely to lose a job, they are actually almost 30% of Pakistanis, they're suspecting that they would be losing the job. So, and if we combine all that information together, we can see the last quarter before just pandemic, the index in Pakistan, that was 32.8, and that has gone down to 22% now. And as I mentioned you before, the current economic situation is not that considered very great. Rather, it's very weak. It's about half of the people that they're considering this to be very weak, and half the person they are also considering their personal financial situation is also very bad. And if we compare this data with the emerging economies, and the global average is 40 as against what we got I 22. So, and now with the same period, Brazil was 37.4. China, it was still, despite all what happened over there, 67.4. Russia 30, and South Africa and Turkey almost same, and India also, it actually is better than actually global average. So now, it was the end of my presentation. I will just share with you that we had been also tracking the journey. Next slide, please. Journey through the whole pandemic, and this is the set of questions which, next slide, please, which our global experts, they have created a metrics of whereby they have been asking 11 feelings, what kind of the sentiment you have at this point in time, and what kind of phase you are passing through in your own judgment. So there are 6 phases which people can actually, they can pick from uncertainty, preparation, adjustment, acclimation, anticipation, and adjusting to the new normal. So this is what we have asked all the respondents in Pakistan, and I can share with you, next slide, that in May, about 30% they were really uncertain, and there was only 7% who had adjusted to the new normal. But now these numbers they are evolving, and very soon we'll be releasing the number for the September also. That now we can see that the uncertainty is reducing. People are now getting more prepared, they are adjusting, and then acclimation is now just settling down the new routines, and then anticipating what is going to happen. And then a good about 10%, 11%, they have now settled to the new normal. So this it has a lot of implications for the businesses, how the market is responding to. So that's all. Thank you. Over to Anis.
Thank you very much, Abdul Babar. And we actually came across some really important insights. I would be quickly summing them up before we move on to the next speaker. And knowing that the local media has been given huge importance while it comes to communication and information about the coronavirus pandemic, that is a very good news. Also, that the religious places were utilized to disseminate the news. Level of concern, which was rightly mentioned, that when it comes to an overall dropping level of concern about the coronavirus, and it can cause complacency. So I think very rightly it was raised as a point that the relevant communication, information, and education should continue. Good to know that while there were 80% people saying no to school in June, we have got the schools open now, and most of them are actually very positive about the schools, about the kids going to schools and continuing their education. The consumer confidence index, though it is low, but we are seeing it gradually going up on the rise. And unemployment as one of the biggest concerns. I think this is one thing that might be common throughout the world at various different surveys. Thank you very much. It was very insightful. We have the next speaker, the former finance minister of Pakistan, Dr. Hafiz A Pasha. He's served in the government till 2007, and as United Nations Assistant Secretary General and United Nations Development Program Assistant Administrator, and a director of the Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific. He is the first Pakistani who raised to this particular position. He has served as Federal Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs, Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission with the status of Federal Minister, Education Minister, and Commerce Minister. We have actually got insights from his side. Unfortunately, as mentioned earlier, Dr. Pasha is severely unwell and is unable to join, but he was very kind to contribute his slides and insights that we would be able to share with the audience today. I would be requesting Abdul Babar to once again hold the stage and go through the slides shared by Dr. Pasha.
Thank you, and I can tell you that I have been in touch with Dr. Hafiz Pasha yesterday evening. I spoke with him. He was not feeling very well. He was unable to even speak very properly, and this morning as well. But he had been kind enough to actually send his all the slides, and he has taken me through. So I can share what he wanted to share with the audience of this webinar. And he also assured me that if the participants of this webinar they have some specific questions, he would be able to respond to their questions, and we can get back to the participants if they have some specific questions about his presentation. So I will just take you through now. So starting from and next slide, the demographic, please. Okay, talking about Pakistan, and we know that when we are, 211 as official records show, we generally we say that we are 220 million, but official record is actually 2011. And as we all know that the census details have not been made public officially with all the details, but whatever the details they have been published officially, we have seen that how things have changed. So we as Pakistani, we still have a very large population of youngsters from 15 to 29, very high. And very drastically we can see that it has changed, since 1998, the very last census. And we can see that the increase cumulative had been 54%, while males they have reduced as a percentage, as a minus 1.5. They have reduced their proportion in the country. At the same time, we can also see that the household size, it has also reduced by 10%. So against a 6.96, now it has reduced to 6.24, and the share of urban population is growing, and it has been 12% increase since last census was conducted. And share in the labor force of women, it was held only 16% in 98, and that has gone to 29%, and that is a massive increase, about 81%. And many of these the women, they are actually playing a very important role in health and education sectors especially, and this is based on the data which government has released. And in fact, there was a question in the 98 census. I wish when we have the full results of the census, we also get to know that how many women in Pakistan, they are actually playing a very active role, because the last time in 98, it was only, in the 20% they were, at home, and out of home they were 80%. And majority of them, they were from the rural areas actually, who have been going out in the field. So it would be interesting to learn that how it has changed. Next slide. So there has been a lot of discussion going on about the GDP growth, and what we have done, that we have seen that how things have shaped up in the last 10 years, because looking at only 1 or 2 years might be misleading. So we looked at the overall 10 years of Pakistan, and we can see that the Pakistani GDP, which is about $265 billion, the average growth since in the last 10 years, it has been about 4%. But if we compare that with the previous decades, there has been a very good decade whereby the annual growth, average, that was hovering in the vicinity of 6%. And this what happened, especially this in the last decade, we think that it was the acts of terror. There was a lot of terrorism going on in Pakistan, and then there was an acute shortage of GDP. And there has been studies which have shown that because of that shortage of the power, it used to hit about 2% of the GDP. Is a massive. And now, thanks to God, now the power generation is no longer a problem. And Pakistan economy in the last 1 decade, it has achieved its peak in 2017-18, when it was 5.5%. It originally, it was stated to be 5.8%, but afterwards the number was reduced officially to 5.5%. But afterwards, in the subsequent 2 years, we can see that it has fallen drastically to 1.9 and then gone actually below 0%. It has happened only after 1951. It's almost about 68, 70 years later. And then now we also wanted to see that what will be the horizon in the next four years. So based on what has been published by the government of Pakistan in their annual plan, they are saying that the next year we would be about 2.1% growth, the subsequent 4, and then the 5. IMF is considering this to be more conservative side, 1%, 3%, and 4%. And World Bank it does not have a lot of confidence, and they are suggesting minus 2.6% of this year and minus 0.2 for the current fiscal year we are passing through. But Dr. Hafiz Pasha, based on his extensive research and everything, his his personal take, based on his own analysis, is that the fiscal year we just finished a few months ago, the actual GDP growth, it was not minus 0.4, rather it was minus 1.5%. But he considered that it would come back, and the current fiscal year GDP growth would be 0.5%. And we have yet to see the real impact of COVID-19. But in the subsequent years, he is agreeing with the government plan that if they are able to manage the law and order situation, political stability, and also the CPEC program as it has have been revealed, so we can get back to the 5% growth path. Next slide. Here I would like to share a good news. If we look at the numbers on more longer term basis on 10 years, we can see here, and you can find more details if you Google the Palma ratio. You will see that this is a surrogate of understanding, what if the income is increasing, or what is happening with the lower tiers, the real poor people in the country versus the very rich people in the country. So this ratio that has reduced from about 6% to 5%, which is a very good news. And I can tell you that this is still better than India and Bangladesh and many other countries in the world, especially which are called emerging markets. So this it means that the prosperity is actually spreading across all segments of the society. And of course, literacy level that is not growing very fast, but now at least especially in the urban areas, we can see that 74% is the literacy level. Of course, it's far from where we should be, but it is the case as of now. Here, I would like to also share that what has COVID-19 has inflicted the big losses to Pakistan is 5.3 million jobs. They have gone in the last about 6 months. And here you can see that the employment participation rate is about 56%, which is actually for the age 15 and above. And agriculture is about 40%. Part is held by agriculture, the biggest sector having the biggest employment, followed by manufacturing, then domestic trade, and many others. Manufacturing is only 16%. And we imagine that the unemployment rate, what is hovering at about 6% in Pakistan, it can actually be worsening in the next few months, but later on we can actually have the recovery of the jobs in the next 2 to 3 years time. Next. Here, what you can see that the interest rates which are announced by the regulator, State Bank of Pakistan, and then in the last about 10 years, how they have been, and how the rate of inflation. You can see they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. And you can see that if the official interest rate, it has been very high in the double digits, the inflation would follow. In the last few months time, yes, I mean, we can see that the interest rate has been reduced significantly from about 13% to about 7%, whereas the State Bank of Pakistan, they have announced a number of financing schemes whereby this interest rate is even lower than about 3% to 5%, which is likely to bring the inflation down. But even if that comes down, we see that what IMF is projecting is about 8%. Government is saying it would be 6.5%, but Dr. Hafiz Pasha's own analysis, it says that it would be still be about in the vicinity of about 10%. Next. So level of savings, they had been relatively very low when it comes to overall understanding. When Pakistan is considered to be a society of spenders actually, but remittances in the last few years, it has been quite good, and which actually raising the national saving rate, which is as we see now is 14%. But the chances are that since, I mean, because of the job losses and the salary cuts in many institutions, we expect this saving is gonna go down. Electricity, we have already talked about that. We have surplus capacity installed. It's all about how we actually manage the mix, the portfolio of the fuel, of the power, to manage the load shedding in some parts of the country. Next. Looking at again about 7 to 8 years of the data, and in terms of the employment growth, that which sectors they have attracted more growth in their employment, number of people employed over there. We see here that the sectors which have grown in the last about 8 9 years: information and communication. It has the highest I would say the rate of growth, and then followed by accommodation, food services, health, arts and entertainment, education, and transportation. So these are the fast growing services in Pakistan. And in the parentheses, you can see that this is actually their contribution in the employment. Next. Here, Dr. Hafiz Pasha, he has explained to me that he had actually, deployed about 5 PhDs and he has run a massive advanced econometric model to understand what has actually led the growth happening in Pakistan. What are the real growth drivers? What he has come up with that, and these ABCD, they are arbitrary names, but his first factor which he has identified as the biggest driver of the economy, that has been the real income. It's not anything artificial. It is the real income, which as I mentioned in some of my earlier slide, that the gap between the rich and the poor has actually gone down, and the benefits of the economy growing further, that has spread well in the society. So people have experienced in real growth in their real incomes. So it is the very first most important finding. And then as the second one mentioned earlier also, that home remittances, they have grown in the last about 10 years. And then availability of the imported goods, since people were able to actually afford these imported goods, so that actually led to a betterment of the trade, because if there is a demand, there's a supply chain which support that. And then the decline in the level of inequality I mentioned earlier, decline in the tax burden. The current tax by it would be felt in the subsequent years, but looking at the overall last 10 years, we can see that the effective burden of tax on the masses of Pakistan, that has actually declined. And lastly, but not the least, very important, that a fall in the interest rates. So the policy of keeping the state bank's policy of keeping the interest rate in the low single digit, that has paid back. So it has been the real driver. Next. And as I told you that since when there was a rising consumer spending, that created a buoyancy in the retail sector. So there had been many new retail chains and outlets, which is called modern trade, that has led. And we can clearly see that for the some of the categories, for example, tea, for milk, vegetable, ghee, oil, beverages, cigarettes, medicines, there has been a tremendous growth. Except for the vegetable ghee, you can see that the growth actually is happening more in the bottom quintile, not in the top quintile. So it clearly shows that people are ready to buy many FMCGs. So it has been a very positive impact on the overall economy in Pakistan. Next. It's very heartening and it's very encouraging that the government officially, they have what their policy they have announced, they are really user friendly for their investors from foreign countries. So I mean, now all any investor in Pakistan, they can hold 100% equity. There's no restriction of repatriation of the dividend, etc. It's then 20% corporate income tax if a new undertaking with at least 50% of the equity through FDI. Then double taxation, we have that agreement with about 60 countries. So there's a avoidance of double taxation. And of course, it's very easy to hire expatriates in Pakistan, and business losses can be carried forward to 6 years for the tax purposes. And also some tax holidays which have been offered in some sectors. So that the peak of $23 billion that was achieved in the FDI, and majority of them it has come from China, especially in the power sector. Historically, Pakistan has been a very good location for multinationals, and as we speak now, it's about $90 billion assets they have in Pakistan, and they are providing about 1 million jobs to Pakistanis. And also they also bring in a lot of capex in Western, is about 2.5 billion dollars, which is getting into telecom sector, into new machinery and upgradation of the current thing. So it is a very good environment for the Pakistanis. So in conclusion, that if there have been few good signs of recovery as we speak now in Pakistan, and if we are able to have boost the exports, if we can actually have a focus on the agricultural sector, and we can modernize our manufacturing industry, and also we can raise the tax revenues, actually direct taxes, and also cutting the public enterprise losses, we can get back to a growth path of 5.5 to 6% in next 3 to 4 years time. That's all. Thank you. Over to Anis.
Thank you very much, Abdul Babar. And it seems that Dr. Pasha has shared some good news. He's very experienced technocrat, served in the government as finance minister, and due to his previous background, I think we could be summing up what he found out, the pieces of the good news. He believes that the Pakistani economy, the $265 billion economy that has been growing at the ratio of 4%, though it is down right now, but it has got very good potential to pick up. He also comments on the largest percentage of young people, the 27% population from 15 to 29 years of old. I think, and not only me, in fact, but there are many international surveys which place Pakistan among the youngest nations, and they also consider this one of the reasons of Pakistan beating the coronavirus pandemic faster than other nations due to the younger population. Good to know that the Palma ratio is reduced, which actually shows greater spread of prosperity and opportunities on equity basis. That means that not only the elite, but the middle class and the lower middle class, they also have the opportunity to be part of it. The bad news is that the 5.3 million jobs are gone, which is actually one of the biggest threat in terms of recovering faster. And the inflation is high. However, the interest rates are down, as we understood, almost 50%, from 13% to 7% by the State Bank of Pakistan, which can actually give that kind of cushion where inflation can spread out in a manner that its bite is gone. Then we found out another good news that the information and communication sector, as the biggest employer in the recent days, more than 11%, which is a good one. The consumer index that shows buoyancy and confidence, which is really amazing. The foreign remittances are at the highest point in the history of the country. And this could be one of the factors that Pakistan could bounce back quicker compared to what has been projected by the IMF and the World Bank. Summing it up, Dr. Pasha believes that it's highly likely that Pakistan would have 4 to 5% growth in the next 2 to 3 years of time, which is a very positive outlook, and we hope that it happens. So thank you very much. We are now proceeding to the next session. I'll be introducing our next panelist, Ayesha Athar. She is the head of CMI at the Unilever. She has 16 years of extensive experience working with the top FMCGs in the country, like P&G, Agri-Foods, and Unilever. She started her career as an HR professional, and for the last decade has been an insight specialist, challenging the norms to become the first female general manager within marketing at Agri-Foods, which is very heartening. She also held the positions of GM Insights and Innovation at EFI, and currently heads the CMI function at Unilever Pakistan. So over to Ayesha Athar.
Hi, thank you, Anis. I hope I'm audible to everybody. Sorry, I got disconnected in between.
Yes, you are.
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. So, Assalamu alaikum to everybody and a good afternoon. I will keep my video off just to ensure that our conversation flows in smoothly. At the get-go, let me just explain quickly what section I come in for. So in keeping with the fact that I come from an FMCG background, Babar has been kind enough to actually award me sections within the same space to share with you. As I amalgamate learnings that we've had from the IPSOS handbook on COVID that has just been released, as well as ongoing consumer work that we've been doing since the start of the pandemic at Unilever. So I've tried to bring home both of those together to share back with you. So that is not just information in terms of numbers, but triangulated information that would give you confidence that those facts, in fact, are very true and manifesting themselves on ground. So thank you, Babar, and thank you, Team IPSOS, for allowing me this time to speak to the audience here. So quickly, there are 3 themes that I'll be talking to you about. If you could just switch on to the next slide, please. I'll start with shopping behaviors, and I'll move on to talk about trends that we've been seeing in terms of people's cooking and eating habits, as well as their personal grooming and beauty habits. So those are the 3 spaces. I'll keep it very brief in terms of what you see on the screen. It'll be a little more about us talking. So just 5 content slides that I will take you through and promise not to bore you through it also. At the get-go, though, let me just set a clear expectation that as we go through these, there are 2 big implications that we're seeing coming out of the whole pandemic that we saw, now that it's settling in Pakistan even more so. I think the first one, of course, has to do with the health orientation and how people have chosen to navigate through the health crisis around COVID-19. And the other bigger one, which we think will have more long-lasting repercussions, are the impact on personal finances and the country's economy as a whole, because that will shape a lot of the consumer behavior more sustainably so in the years to come. So I've distilled here in terms of the shopping habits, 8 key themes we've seen surface. And for simplicity's sake, I've broken it into 2. So if you see the red arrow at the top, that is actually all those trends where we see things coming down. And the bottom 4 are the ones where we see those going up. So starting with the top, we see the frequency of a lot of the trips, shopping trips that consumers used to have to the market go down quite a bit. But what is interesting is that historically, whenever that behavior manifests, we almost always see quantities per trip go up. But in this case, we see those economic pressures really weighing in as we see both the frequency of those trips go down for consumers by 46%. So 46% people have said that they are making a lot fewer trips out to the market, and the quantities that they're purchasing too have been checked. A consequence of the same is what we see in terms of the variety per category that people are going for. So what this means is, let's say for the likes of a shampoo, where pretty much every member of the family had their own individual choices, and so various brands came into the household. Let's say 3 or 4 brands per household. That number is being checked. So it's maybe down to just 2 brands, essentially catering to the needs of the entire family, and that has been done to manage economics within the household and to hold accountability for how much is being consumed by who, pretty much. As a consequence, understandably, spending has gone down. Obviously, if people are purchasing less and going to the market less, then the spending is naturally coming down by the same proportion. And if you notice the numbers, they hover around the 40%. So it kind of corroborates what we're seeing across also. What we have seen now as a result of the spending going down is not just the quantities being purchased less, but it's also preference for promotional items or things going on sale. Cheaper brands being purchased, so less, more economical brands being purchased, really. In part, that is also what's bolstered this growth for the local brands, where they are seen as more economical options by the consumers. What has also helped local brands away from that is the fact that we've seen a lot of travel restrictions, understandably, cross-border, which has restricted the inflow of foreign goods, multinational brands that we see infiltrate our market traditionally. That's being checked. So availability has also helped a lot of the local brands along. And we do see that this will continue for a little while. The last of the trends is the smaller pack sizes being preferred or picked up more, and more to do with the fact that, with the smaller, the frequency of trips going down, people are obviously purchasing smaller quantities when they go out into the market. There is a slight caveat, though. I think this would really differ in terms of some of the categories that come into play. So for most of the categories we've seen at Unilever, a good majority of them have actually not seen smaller pack sizes, but larger pack sizes being picked up. So I just wanted to share that caveat. That's something that we've seen slightly differently, but I'm sure that there are categories that would have consumers exhibit this kind of behavior as well. If you could move to the next slide. Manifesting a lot of these shopper habits are in the kind of channel behavior that we see. So 2 big call outs here. One, we've seen, because of the shorter frequency, like I said, and the smaller purchases and the pocket size, bite size spending that consumers is doing, we have seen the Kiryana or the neighborhood stores really go up by almost 52%, more frequently visited than they were before. And because of that personal relationship that one is able to strike with the neighborhood shop or the retailer who serves you at a Kiryana, it's also helped the other trend along, which is really home deliveries through calling the retailer directly or just messaging across for things that you may require. And you may remember earlier on when COVID started, there was a severe shortage for a lot of hygiene and health related products. And so this relationship really helped, as and when things became available, the retailers really, for the preferred customers, would reach out and let them know that something is available, whether at a premium or otherwise, and it would just help bolster, again, this relationship forward. So we've seen not so much the more evolved digital solutions play up, unfortunately, because of an underdeveloped e-com structure in Pakistan. I think it was an opportunity really missed. We really had a fantastic opportunity to see a boom in the Pakistan market given the circumstances. But we have seen more traditional ways of going about remote ordering and remote ways of operating and shopping come into play. Next slide, please. So the second space we will be talking about is going to be the dining, cooking, and snacking habit changes that we've seen. And I'd like to make 8 big call outs here. So if you switch on to the next slide. The first one that we're seeing is a lot more of family members really leaning in to help out in the kitchen. So people who were traditionally, kept themselves away from the kitchen, we've seen, given the circumstances and the fact that there's been limited help at home, a lot more people come in also to while away time, really. Many people developed an inkling towards polishing their culinary skills. So we've seen far more people trying to help out kids, even men for that matter. And from some of our internal numbers, what we've also seen is a lot more of this trend, surprisingly, has come in the smaller towns and the rural towns. And why so is because, again, the cooking skills and the culinary skills of the men in these areas are far more evolved than what we see on the city side. So these numbers were surprisingly for us a little more skewed when we saw data from the less developed parts of Pakistan. Second is replicating restaurant dishes. So we know, of course, the dining out, something that's been an industry that's been under check. So restaurants, etc., all of that has been under check. Even ordering in of food has been something that had been stopped during lockdown, but a lot of people also kept away from it consciously. So the attempt was to try and replicate a lot of these restaurant experiences and dishes both at home. I know from a lot of the conversations that the two top trending cuisines that we saw in the metro towns particularly were Italian and Chinese cuisines. So, people really trying to look up dishes and experiment more in those spaces, whereas more experimentation in the desi space was something that we saw in the rural side, but there was experimentation still. Which nicely brings me to the third trend on experimentation. So while we did speak of experimentation in trying out restaurant dishes, there were a lot of firsts. So people who had not cooked before started cooking and experimenting. People in the family who had not had a hand at baking, let's say, tried and experimented in that space. They looked up recipes they hadn't before, and this was not just because of being stuck at home, but I think a lot of people didn't even have time available earlier on, given the kind of routines they lead. So that also allowed them to really lean in and experiment. And weekends became a very interesting occasion for people to experiment and for people to try something special out for the family in an effort to also entertain them and keep them energized. So the fourth one in terms of the call outs is home cooking. I think home cooking is here to stay. The reason is not only the fact that the health benefits here act up, but for many people, because they've done it over a longer period of time, probably for the first time in their lives, really, over months, they've realized and verbalized the actual spending they've realized as a result of consuming food in home and not really dining out or ordering in. So they know the kind of impact that can have on their personal finances, and given those are under pressure, we expect that this will be a trend that will go on for a while. Next slide, please. Right, so the fifth call out that I'd like to make, thank you, is around immunity boosting food and eating healthy. Now, eating healthy, not from a necessarily diet standpoint, but this is more from not dieting standpoint, but more from the standpoint of keeping the system really strong, the immunity system up and running in order to fight off and ward off any such threat of viruses that may come their way. So people have become a lot more conscious in terms of eating fruits and vegetables that weren't part of their regular diet. People who didn't consume dairy products started consuming the same for their nutritional value, etc. And things like kalonji, things like honey, those kind of things that have incredible health benefits, dates, etc. All of those started featuring into diets that we had not seen previously. The sixth call out is convenience being on the rise. So, a lot of people being at home because the females were looking after far more responsibilities than they were used to, not having a lot of help domestically. And having to take care of chores away from cooking itself, they were looking for convenience. So things that they could quickly get done with to attend to other chores out there as well. And the other interesting angle on convenience, which was unique in this case, was the fact that many people, like I said, who did not have very polished culinary skills were looking at shortcuts or, ways in which they could have solutions that would help them halfway, whereas they sort of cover the other half, the journey itself, to deliver a perfect meal for the family itself. So they weren't looking for ready-made. They did want to add that touch. So it was something that was easy to make and not ready to make that came out as a theme. Now we know that the routines that we had in COVID were pretty much off the charts. For many, I know in my family, for example, they said, you know, अब तो कोई उसूल ही नहीं रहे हैं जब से COVID शुरू हुआ है, कब सोते हैं, कब उठते हैं, इसका कोई निजाम नहीं है. So people were waking up pretty late. Many of them because they didn't have jobs or you know, businesses to go to, or schools were shut. While we adjusted in the initial couple of months, the routines completely went out of whack. So people were waking up late, having you know, breakfast and lunch combined as a brunch that just became one meal instead of two, and then just dinner. And a lot of snacking hence found its way in the middle. So you know, just to sort of have a quick fill in because the routines were pretty out. Also with a lot of you know, family bonding moments around watching some content on media or board games or enjoying a chat with the family, etc. There were a lot of occasions where things like tea and beverage consumption had gone up. People had just started snacking while they sat together. So a lot of such occasions really cropped up. I think the last call out here in terms of ordering versus dining out, I think while people ease out in terms of the longer impact of COVID, as they ease out in terms of ordering in food, I think dining out will still take a little while, probably you know, next year is when we really see it coming back into its full swing. But for now, there are a lot of people still hesitant to go into that dining out experience itself. Which nicely brings me to actually the last part of the section, and this is just the one slider on grooming and personal care. If you switch on to the next slide, what we saw with people actually staying in is they became a lot more casual about their looks and their appearances. And I'm sure many of you have seen a lot of jokes go around, videos, memes, etc. around, you know, even in official connects, people wearing the pajamas or shorts and, you know, just dressing waist up really for the camera itself. So, you know, lots of jokes around that. And that's a reality, frankly, that we became a lot more casual. So things in terms of, let's say, you know, your skincare regime or your hair care regime, it became a lot less about styling or your end look because you weren't really stepping out much. It became far more about nourishment for the skin or your hair, and even focusing so much on your hair growth by maybe oiling it far more than you used to, because, you know, if you're stepping out, you don't necessarily want to apply a lot of oil. So oiling really picked up. And for taking care of the skin and hair, instead of commercial products, we saw a lot more of natural solutions and DIYs really play up. And what people went out for in terms of DIYs were very common kitchen ingredients or very common garden ingredients that you would find, things like besan, haldi, eggs, yogurt, cucumber, honey, those kind of things really that they would make masks out of or scrubs out of, and so on and so forth. I think the last of the call-outs, and this again, everybody will empathize with, is a prolonged lockdown also, you know, took us to a point where we realized, you know, we can't go on like this with long beards, with hair, which is completely growing in all directions. So very basic grooming skills in terms of haircuts or, you know, trimming a beard or things like that is something that people learned. They got tutorials on, a lot of companies were smart to timely put tutorials out there. Many beauty parlors who are out of business actually took the digital route in terms of educating you know, consumers on how to go about doing the same. Women who were not used to dyeing their hair at home learned that art of how to go about it. So why we think this is going to be a trend moving forward of people doing a lot of this themselves is, again, a lot of the economic pressures. You spend lots when you actually visit your parlors or spas, both for men and women. Knowing some of these basic skills will help bring that budget under a lot of check as well. So just wanted to leave you with some of those call outs. Very happy to answer any questions that you may have later on with regards to the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayesha. And very interesting, very intriguing insights from the perspective of shopping behaviors. Now, a quick summation of that is that the frequency of visits to the stores that went down 46%, and some very useful insights, particularly that impacted when the lockdown was in full swing. This actually resulted in the bolstered growth of the local brands, the local stores. The neighborhood stores actually gained 52% of business that was probably lost by the bigger stores or superstores during the lockdown time. The home deliveries picked up 40%, and I think this trend is obvious from ordering food to ordering various other items. Ayesha mentioned e-com missed opportunity. There is another research that actually shows this. Around 200 billion rupees of worth missed opportunity in e-commerce. Unfortunately, the Pakistan e-com technologically and otherwise was not ready enough. Like we still don't have the Amazon or the PayPal. Otherwise, we could have seen hundreds of billions traded into or invested into the e-com opportunity during the lockdown time. We also found out some good insight on the gender-specific culinary skills of males getting into the kitchen and doing experimental cooking, and also finding how eating at home while it remains healthy also positively impacts the home budget. Immunity boosting food consumption that also rose, and this entire cooking together, doing stuff together, that bonded families together as well. And we also found out that the ordering food is still on the rise, and people are reluctant to go back to the respective their best restaurant or eatery of their choice. And these trends might stay in the air for 1.5 years time before they fully come back to normalcy. Now we go to the next speaker, the next panelist for this particular webinar. We have Kamil Yousuf, who is head of insights at PepsiCo Pakistan. He's an MBA with 16 years plus research and marketing experience with Unilever, Nielsen, and PepsiCo. Currently, Kamil works as a regional head insight manager for MESA at PepsiCo, and also looking after the Pakistan Insight portfolio as head of insights. So over to Yusuf Kamil.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Anis, and my many thanks to the IPSOS team, Babar in particular, for roping me in for this session. He knows I'm very reluctant to go on sessions, sessions like these, but he has been, I don't know, he somehow convinced me to come in, and I'm really glad that I'm here. I've heard some very good insights talk, some great work on by Dr. Hafiz, and some insightful words by Babar, and some very good insightful slides that Ayesha just shared. What I'm going to be talking about as we go further is an excerpt from what the IPSOS handbook is all about. And I'm going to start off with something that we Pakistanis are known for, and that's socializing. We are very social people. We love to go to people's home. We love to have parties. We love to gather. We love to have big weddings, and that's true for our subcontinental culture. But while I say that this all is something we do and we love doing, but what has happened these last 6 to 7 months of turmoil has changed our habits, but has made sure that people are really, I would really want to go back to what I was doing earlier. But there's a certain section of our society who feels, that I'm going to stick with what I have learned in these behaviors until I'm very sure that COVID or whatever has completely gone out of the window and it's completely out, rather than wait, rather than take a step and be bold enough. But the majority of the people are really frustrated. They really want to get out of their homes, and this has been this was evident on Eid al-Fitr. When we had that, we suddenly had people running out as soon as the lockdown eased, and everybody went, I want to go out, meet friends. And then what happened? COVID cases started to rise, and then she suddenly realized, okay, it's a mistake, And then we did take some socially responsible steps as a country, and then we saw those. We have managed the number of cases, and but we really do want to go back to it. That's the important part. Really wants to meet my friends, go out to school, go out to parties. Believe me, I've been missing going out to the weddings that happen in Karachi. Even though I'm based in Lahore, I would love to go to the weddings in Karachi and enjoy the food there. And food, like we saw in the last section that Ayesha just presented, is a favorite pastime of a Pakistanis, and it's a super entertainment for us Pakistanis. So we do miss that aspect as well. And though we have tried to come up with ways to stop the rot, as I say, or of the boredom bit, but that's still there. Yeah, you can move to the next slide. Yeah. And what's happened is in our culture, the best part is you meet somebody is males and females alike, is you shake hands and then you give each other a hug. Depending on the level of friendliness or level of closeness we have with that person, a handshake had always been part of the culture. When the pandemic hit, the first thing that came out was, now we can't even shake hands. That's really non-Pakistani, and that's non-societal, and that's very rude. But we have come to live with that, like we have come to live with a mask. Believe me, I'm somebody who I have to wear this mask, and I become claustrophobic. But even when now I'm in the car with my driver, I have the mask on. Because I feel that's the norm, and it's better to be safe than sorry, and that's what most of the people have adapted to, wearing the mask. Handshakes, yes, people would still want to do it. I see the lower socioeconomic classes still do it, because because that could be lack of education, lack of worry, and mostly fake bravado that we have as Pakistanis. It's not going to happen. But the educated class, the people who are aware of this problem, who are aware that this is going to hit them hard, they have taken it in the stride. And the mask is, but the most important thing, the mask has come out to be the very fundamental part of your attire now, if you are part of any SEC. Yeah, moving on. Yeah, so one was societal. The other most important part is the household expenses. This is something that we all have been through it, and some very important, or some very nice insights that came out of the IPSOS survey, and they're corroborated all across. When I've met consumers in the past 6 months, when I've talked to consumers, when I've talked to retailers, or just not me, people in my organization, we have seen this. So can you move on to the next slide? Yeah. So what has happened? The overall, and again, something very important. When we say income, we must remember that we Pakistanis, and like there's something Babar alluded to when he was presenting the economic bit, that we as a nation are not big savers, we are big spenders, which means whatever income that we have is termed as disposable income. We dispose of it. Even only yesterday, I was in a session and we were discussing, and there was a global team member flashed Pakistan's data, and it reminded me that we fall on the left extreme, the leftmost extreme, where our disposable income is very low. Once your disposable income is low, you will feel the pinch of any pandemic. Remember, guys, and for the audience, and I'm sure everybody knows this, this pandemic is something that is unprecedented. It's not like the 2008 financial crisis. It is not something that also impacted the world, but this impacts everybody more than the 2008 financial crisis, because it's something that is mortal. That's going to lead to a mortality. Yeah. So what's happened? Can you go? Yeah, finish it. So what has happened is our lower economic class, that's E, seems to be the most impacted, and rightly so. The first one to lose jobs, the first one to lose work are the daily wage earners, and this SECE. So we see the impact over there. Can you move on to the next slide? Yeah. And now the next few slides are very interesting. Household income shrinking, and what are you shrinking on? It's an impact all across. So it's just not that I have increased grocery shopping. I might have bought in bigger bags, but like the speaker before me, she said something very important. The cheaper brands have taken up. If I was buying or if I'm part of SECD or E, and if I were buying a top tier CSD, I'm shifted to a tier 2 or a tier 3 CSD at the moment. If I was buying 2 bottles of a CSD, I'm now buying 1. If I was buying the finest flour in the world, now I've gone down to chakki ka atta, for that matter, which is cheaper compared to maybe a branded flour bag. Yeah, a similar case with rice and all those commodities. And we'll see in subsequent slides where how is that panning out across urban, rural, SECs. So can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so if you look at it, the phenomena is all across, and you see the most impacted is Baluchistan, which is the most the weakest of our province, or the weakest or most underdeveloped of our province. So and what we see is people, and this is something that is still in the news. Parents have stopped spending on education. By education, it could be tuition fee, it could be schools, because schools, not all schools have the online facility. Not all schools have that facility to go online. So parents have rather said, okay, we will not pay fee while my kids is not going to school. Entertainment is one of the most I hear people whenever, and this is something that I've been hearing for the last so many years. We're an entertainment starved nation. What avenues of entertainment do Pakistanis have? We had cinemas, which unfortunately were closed during the pandemic. We don't have amusement park like the West would have it, or in some cases like India would have it. Our neighbor would have it. We lag behind there. And social, the only avenues of social outings we have had, and which has gone in a boom, has been restaurants, food, and which has also gone down. So in this pandemic, your disposable income goes down, you have less to spend, and and prices have slightly gone up of everything. Everything is not available in close proximity as well. Like we just saw a few minutes ago that mohalle ki dukaan, the karyanas or the small grocers have gone up, which means these small grocers, the mohalle ki dukaan, the karyanas, they don't have a variety. They won't have varieties like your Carrefours or the Metros of the world, or the Al Fatehs or the Amis of the world in Karachi or Lahore. And what will happen is you will have to settle for whatever is there. And in most cases, if you don't find your brand or something that you really need, not your brand or a product that you need, you will probably say, I'll live without it. Yeah. So that's what's happened as well. Moving on. And we see our lower SECs more impacted. The only anomaly, or not the anomaly, is that the SECs and Ds and Es being stuck at home. They have said, okay, we'll shrink other things. We will spend slightly more on household. With the male staying at home, joblessness is coming in. They've stayed at home. It could be a virtue of things becoming more expensive. It could be a virtue of wholesale markets being shut down and them being relying on what is expensive and buying that, forced to buy that. And while we'll see in the next few slides. Can you move to the next slide? Some interesting things will also come out in the next few slides. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this again is related to what we just saw. Habits, socializing, household expenditure, and what is interesting, you see the reds here. You see the greens. Greens are okay, and the reds and the greens should be in combination. You see CSDs go down. The hard disk hit. Why that? Whenever you go to somebody's home, one way socializing is free. The other way is socializing is a CSD. That's gone down. You see energy drinks go down because, hey, they're all on the go. People aren't going out of their houses. You see, important and interesting to note was that you saw toilet soaps go down slightly. But on the other hand, you saw the liquid hand washes go up. You saw the sanitizers of the world go up. You saw the tissues of the world go up. And why is that? Because people are rationalizing their grocery basket. When the pandemic hit, it was, I think, when the first lockdown happened in Pakistan, and then we went into lockdown on 23rd of March, and the week preceding that, I was bold enough to go to one of these international grocery chains, and me and my wife, I only went to top up of what was not there at home because I was being very risky. Oh, it's going to all open. I was being very optimistic. Everything's going to settle down. Uh, but what I saw of people, was uh, tissue rolls, a lot of hand sanitizers. Hand sanitizer vanished. I think everybody who witnessed that, hand sanitizer vanished. Bottled water suddenly. That was one time when bottled water picked up. But if you see water, bottled water going down here would mean it is home delivery bottled water going down, office bottled water going down, because those avenues shut down. But you see, whatever a negative you see here, there is a positive countersending that or replacement category already there. Yeah. Moving on. Next slide, please. Okay. So half of the respondents tell us from this survey that nothing has changed in my life. So now when they say nothing has changed in my life, is there might have been an initial change, but I'm coming back. So the heading on the side is half the people say there's no change in my lifestyle, while the other half has said there's going to be change in my lifestyle. It's always that cliche of the half full, the glass half full and the half glass empty. It's how you positively you want to look at it. I just gave you an example of myself and my family. We were at this shopping place, Metro, the week the pandemic or the lockdown hit, and we were optimistic. No, don't buy this, or we'll have this, we'll find this. And 2 weeks later, I was again at this shopping center and looking for my favorite brand of flour, which was running out. And I said, okay. My wife said, buy these 1 kg pouches. I said, okay, hold on. And then I called up a few people. I said, do you have this? I said, keep it for me. I'm coming. And I said, keep 2. You saw the level of panic if somebody as optimistic as me, and people who know me, they know I'm very optimistic. I see everything will happen for a reason and everything will settle down. Even I panicked, which was very unlike me. But the people are returning back to the normal. People are coming back to normal, which is and say some things will return to normal. We heard both the speakers before me, Babar and Ayesha, say that it's going to take some time. It's going to take a year and a half maybe, but things will return to normal. But there will be some people who will continue to live in the new normal. Next slide, please. You can move on. You can move on. And something very interesting. People have adopted new hobbies here. People have found a new love for the indoor games. People have found new love for gardening or indoor cooking. People have. I've seen people post videos on Facebook and other social media platforms about staying healthy by doing a lot of exercises. I'm not a big exercise freak, but I've started exercising at home, and I just don't do it alone. I have my wife and my daughter there. Let's do exercising together. I get bored. I'm somebody who do people friends who know me. I'll go to the gym for if I go to the gym for an hour. 30 minutes would be I will be socializing with them, and the rest of the 30 would be time spent on changing myself into my gym attire, and the last 5-7 minutes I would just do the gym and run away. But I've adopted to this normal to staying healthy, and this one of the hobbies. I'm taking this hobby. I'm taking it as a spending more time with my family during this pandemic. And that's what people are doing. Hobbies have on the rise, and this is something people say we will want to take forward and keep continuing to do, develop this, and take forward. Yeah. Next slide, please. Next slide. And last slide. More than half of the population feel that post-COVID, it will not be the same, which is true, which we have already seen. We have seen adaptations. People are adapting to the new normal, living with it. I just gave personal examples of myself, and that's the best example I say to people. That is, you should give personal examples of what you are changing as a person. Is that I have gotten used to the mask. I don't leave home without the mask. I have gotten home to working from home. I know it's very unhealthy. You should be meeting people, but and this working from home has created unhealthy hours for all. I think almost all of us on this calls, and people. I would love to go back to that office setting, but I feel that this has really shown me that we as humans can adapt, and the new normal is not going to be something that we have experienced in the past. When the pandemic hit, and this is my last quote, when the pandemic hit, it felt like something I was out of a Steven Spielberg movie or a sci-fi movie or a Stephen King book. Everything is going to crash, and you'll have to adapt. You will live in a bubble. So yeah, people are adapting, consumers are adapting, and that's the best sign. Last words. Pakistan is a resilient nation. We as Pakistanis have shown that we have risen from the ashes, like the phoenix in the famous Harry Potter book, and we will continue to do that, inshallah. So thank you, and over and out from my end, and happy to answer questions, guys, at the end of the call.
Thank you, Kamil Yousuf. Once again, very interesting insights and perspectives. Kamil,
Arif, can I say something? We are running late, and Mr. Samar has to actually go by another commitment in 20 minutes. So Shayan, is it okay that if Samar Saab can, wrap up a few things, then
Sure,
we'll
sure.
continue, Shayan.
As long as
Yeah?
you can. Yeah.
Yes, Samar Saab, please.
Yes. So, right, we have the expert panel in which we have Samar Hayat, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Tapal Tea Private Limited. He is a leading Pakistan's expert tea company. 2 consecutive years of extraordinary growth, despite Pakistan's tough macro environment. He's led the company to excellent growth, which is commendable. Prior to joining Tapal, Samar spent 20 years with Procter & Gamble, based in Saudi and Switzerland and Dubai, leading giant global brands such as Pampers, Gillette, Head & Shoulders, and Pantene for Middle East, Africa, India, Pakistan region. So Samar, it would be great listening to your insights from your expert point of view on the survey and its relevant results.
Gee, thank you. You can hear me fine?
Yes, you're
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for the time, and I appreciate it very much. I think these were some very powerful insights already, and I think there's some more that people will share. One of the interesting ones that I found was the when Babar was sharing early on that 80% of Pakistanis have been able to resume activities, and I think we see it all around us. And in fact, it's some of us have started to do also things like market visits, etc. I was on a market visit in a town called Hafsabad outside Lahore about 2-3 weeks ago, And other than me and the two of our sales people, I didn't find any single human being with a mask on in that town. And we had a funny incident. We walked into one of the shops, and the retailer looked at us and said, "Kya wo aapko dekh ke to corona yaad aa gaya." Right? So it looks like some of the people have already transitioned to a world that's post-COVID, although it is not a post-COVID world. And in fact, it's a bit surreal because, as you were saying, Anis, earlier on, that while UK and France and some of the other countries start to transition, or start to kind of go back into mindset here. And I think what I would like to say is what I learned from some of the insights that have been shared so far, and what we see around us, is that less than the COVID health-related concerns, we now seem to be transitioning to a more, of issues regarding increasing poverty, increasing unemployment, anxiety and fears around losing jobs. And I think it's very interesting because as business managers and business leaders, I think we also need to start making the transition now. The insights that were extremely relevant at the time when there was lockdown and where there were a major shutdown of the economy. Now I think we need to start focusing a lot more on insights that will play a role where at least Pakistan seems to be in. So I think what a lot of we need to put a lot of focus on is that we need to be sure we are focusing on insights that are very relevant to living with COVID world, and this discussion that needs to be had, because a lot of the data is pointing to issues around reduced income. And obviously, as we know, I mean, I'm in the FMCG industry, there is a huge implication of consumer purchasing pattern, consumer behavior shifts that happen when people are living with reduced income or with very high uncertainty around income. So I think this to me is a very powerful point out of this conversation that we need to now start looking at. And I think this is sort of bad news for most of the industry, because at a time when consumers are squeezed for purchasing power, they generally tend to make decisions differently than when they have abundance. I think, but within this bad opportunity for those of us who are able to pick the relevant insights out of all the insights that have been shared, and there'll be much more out there, spending time with consumers a lot, spending time with trade a lot, to really make sure, obviously in a safe way with masks and everything, but to make sure that what we are doing is very relevant to that living with COVID time. So that's what I wanted to say. And another last point I wanted to make is, I get the opportunity to. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Can
Denise, can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay, good. So I think another thing is I get the opportunity. We have this forum called the Business Council, and we get an opportunity to interact with some of the senior government leaders. We met the Governor State Chancellor, we met the Commerce, and I have to say that there seems to be tremendous focus on ensuring that the right fundamentals. So I think the report that Dr. Hafiz Pasha, the slides that he had prepared, do show a light at the end of the tunnel, right? I mean, 21, 22, slightly tricky year maybe, but post that, and usually my experience is the way reality turns out is usually worse than some of the data, some of the prediction, and also sometimes reality turns out better than some of the predictions. It's never exactly as per the prediction. So if it looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel, we might get there faster. So I think what is heartening, and I think it's a very positive thing, is that from at least from my position, what I've seen is there is tremendous commitment and energy on putting the economy on the right path. In fact, we have seen a lot of reports. The civil military focus seems to be on the same thing. I remember once we had a meeting with Shabar Zaidi while he was FPR chairman, and he said something very, very relevant, which I liked. He said, the focus needs to be on making sure Pakistan is a going concern. You know how in accounting terms there is companies that are going concern, that Pakistan is a sovereign going concern that continues to have high economic relevance in the new world. And I think there seems to be tremendous focus on that. So I think my last closing comment on this is, we should let the experts do their job. There seems to be a tendency around us for everybody to start becoming an expert at at what is not their job. I think our job needs to be to focus on what we do and do that to the best of our abilities. So my one message to the audience would be, now in this time, for us, we need to worry and have less uncertainty about things outside our control, like the macroeconomic picture, which we should let the experts deal with, and they're doing. Like I said, I think they're very focused on it. Our job is to do the best at what we do. I think the insights that will be relevant to people in times of job uncertainty, reduced purchasing power, etc., will be the winner insights for the time to come. So that's all I wanted to say. I'll stick around for another 15 minutes, and I have to run to a.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Samar. Some very interesting and rather very enlightening and heartening comments shared by yourself. There are a couple of questions probably we'll get back to you when the last panelist is done, particularly from your perspective. So we move on to Shayan Khaliq, who is head of consumer insights and data monetization at Jazz. Shayan is currently working as head of consumer insights and data monetization, which is the #1 network, Jazz, and leading 4G provider in Pakistan. He has worked at Nielsen in the past, so his ties with market research are strong and passionate. With over 12 years of experience in working for the telecom and tech industry, he brings an expert opinion and perspectives on insights regarding connectivity during the pandemic. So over to you, Shayan.
Thank you, Art. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I think most of my colleagues, fellow panelists, and Samar Saab as well have covered a lot of things with regards to the pandemic in a very, I would say, comprehensive manner. And I know we've talked a lot about COVID, but there was an inherent baseline requirement to live in a world where we suddenly got so disconnected, and that was connectivity itself. And that's something that I'm going to talk about in the coming slides. So if you can move to the next slide, I just wanted to touch upon the need for connectivity that immediately grew as soon as the pandemic hit, the globe. And this is just snapshots from one of the advertisements that Jazz came out as soon as the pandemic hit. And I think it's just sort of sums up in a very nice way how we were still connected in a very disconnected world. So, I mean, parks were empty, shops were closed, restaurants were closed, schools were closed, offices were closed, but we were still talking to each other. We were still e-meeting each other. We were still, having video calls, phone calls, SMS, WhatsApp, you name it. We were connected. It is during this time, as compared to something like, for example, the Spanish flu in 1912, where such connectivity did not exist. And because of that, I think it was, in comparison, easier to live during such a pandemic situation because of high connectivity that we had. And I think this is where I especially feel very proud that being as part of the telecom industry, we were, really at the forefront of providing this connectivity to consumers and keeping everyone connected. And this is why, this advertisement also sort of encompasses and covers that. And I'm really thankful to Babar Saab and IPSOS for, bringing these insights, because these are absolutely invaluable to us to know what is happening in the market, how our consumers are thinking. And this is something which, if you can move to the next slide, I will touch upon how our behaviors changed as soon as we were locked down. And this is something that Ayesha and Kamil also touched upon for different aspects. So for example, for connectivity, immediately when you're shut down at home, for me, this was a very easy transition, being, let's say, for example, an introvert, or let's say a nerdy person. I mean, for me, it was an easy transition. You just shut me down at home. And that's where I basically spent 90% of my time even before COVID. So for someone like me, it was easy, but for others, they had to actually start to get used to it. And this is why the insights that are presented in the report by IPSOS is actually validated by actual behavior, which I've shown here in, so we basically also use an app analytics tool internally. This is data from that. And the top left chart, which is video conferencing, shows you the increase immediately when the lockdown hit in video conferencing services like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, etc. People weren't even using some of these services before the lockdown. And then immediately, so this is Pakistan's data, right? People started using these services because they had to be connected, be it for education, be it for office work, be it for anything. I mean, for the longest time, for almost 5-6 months, I had been working from home. Even just recently, we have started opening offices with a very small, percentage of employees coming in on a roster and rotation. So video conferencing was one of the biggest needs that we as Jazz also adopted, and everyone had to get used to it. And I think this is where one of the quotes from our CEO will come really handy, because I really liked it. So we have been struggling in trying to make Pakistan digital. That's one of the ambitions of Jazz. And our CEO aptly said that, we've been trying really hard, but it seems like COVID is doing a better job. COVID, Pakistan ko digital bana dega. Like, COVID has accelerated that need for becoming virtual, becoming digital, and getting, adapted with internet. This was also seen in gaming. I mean, who would have thought that in Pakistan we would be having gaming competitions for, let's say, something like PUBG and whatnot, and people are playing, as you can see in the bottom chart, games like Ludo Star, PUBG. These again increased significantly post the lockdown, and people started using and playing games more because they were sitting at home and had to kill time. Which is basically again something that I do anyways. So I think for the lockdown, it became necessary that people found other alternate means of entertainment, and that's something where on the next slide I will also show that the IPSOS study validates that there were other services as well that people started using. So if you talk about, and this is, by the way, just a summary or snapshot of what the study says. The details, obviously, you can get in touch with IPSOS for. So online gaming, 20% people use their mobile phones or PC or consoles, etc. for online gaming. This increased, the usage was higher than before, and a significant amount started using this during COVID, and including streaming services, Netflix, YouTube, etc. Ebooks, because now I can't actually go and buy a physical book from a shop. I had to rely on online mediums. E-learning, because all educational institutions moved to online methods of learning. E-learning was also something that increased for people and changed their habits. And this is interesting because some of these habits are changing and sticking around for a longer time period. Others, are coming and going. And I think these ones, the primary ones, will stick around because, as Kamil also mentioned, with the shopping carts being modified on necessities and other things that, I now learned that I can do without, especially also Ayesha talked about this, that we are learning skills that we previously thought were difficult, but because of the need of the pandemic, we started, learning those skills. I think those are behaviors which will stick. And this is why we see that people shifting to means of entertainment online will stick, because that's easy, it's accessible, it's doable, and it is something which is lockdown friendly and even usable in the new normal. If you can go to the next slide. And so which is why a lot of people, majority, or rather actually almost 50% said that their behaviors will stay the same for, be it gaming, be it streaming services, be it ebooks or e-learning. So this is that sticking behavior that will carry on into the new normal. And once these habits stick around, this is where new opportunities come in. There are new opportunities for institutions to start thinking on e-learning programs more, because there were online courses before, but no one was honestly really taking them that seriously, because everyone believed in actually going to classroom and going to learn on campus. Now, off-campus learning and online learning has improved significantly. I think more attention will be paid by educational institutions to this especially growing medium, and making online classes almost as good as physically being on campus. And I think that's something that's just growing tremendously across the globe. If you can move on. And then the other thing which started changing in terms of behavior was our needs for financial and digital services, right? So because of the lockdown, a lot of things closed down and everything, was difficult to get access to, including for us telecoms. It was difficult to get your prepaid connection recharged, right? Because shops were closed. That's where we saw, even for us, because we provide digital financial services through Jazz Cash, and there's also Easy Pesa and other services, we saw an immediate increase in those, because people were sitting at home, but they had to use their phones. That's the primary means of staying connected with people. And in that, in order to get balance into their phones, they started using these online services. And again, this brings me back to the fact that we've been trying so hard to convert people to these digital services, but we made some headway, but it was triggered through this catalyst, through this pandemic of COVID, that people actually felt the need and started using that service. And that's also something which will stick around. So people who have started now coming to these digital financial services and started paying their bills online, started sending money to someone online, and use these easier mediums to do their basic things when it comes to financial services, is where we are now transitioning into that digital world. So even, for example, if you see for credit cards, paying bills, donating money, transferring money to someone, these were things that people did not even think of doing online, but usage increased higher than before, and also some people started using it during COVID. And these are the sort of behaviors that are slowly and steadily picking up, and then COVID sort of accelerated them. And if we go to the next slide, we'll also see that most of these behaviors are going to stick around. It's not like they will just go away, because people who are now experiencing that ease, who are now experiencing that change, for them it is going to become that much more acceptable, that this is an easier way to get my things done. Previously I had to go and stand in line to pay my bill, and now I just can do it at the tap of a button on my phone. And these are things which, even though as we say, necessity is the mother of invention, so I mean, right, we had to get into a situation where we were locked down to realize that digital services actually benefit us. So I think that's where, for us as telecoms and for other communication services, it was crucial to provide services and keep people connected. And I think this in the future will also become important for us as an onus on us, that we need to deliver better services to keep people more connected in this growing future that is virtually connected rather than physically connected. And I think that's something that is preparing us for the future ahead. I think that's all from my side. I will be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Shayan. Very, very useful insights on staying connected in a disconnected world. That also brings us to the end of this webinar. While we are around 20 minutes, we overflew on the designated time. So we are going to respond to the questions through the email. So those who are still with us, the attendees are requested to email their questions, and we would endeavor getting back to you by connecting you with the relevant expert. Unfortunately, we have not been left with enough time to answer the questions live. I'm grateful to all the expert panelists who shared these wonderful insights. While after the pandemic, actually, we can't say after the pandemic, it's still a going concern right now, with most of the European countries actually sliding down into it, and the rest of the world. Pakistan is easing out. We hope that these invaluable insights from IPSOS these surveys, what the findings are going to provide us some of the stepping stones about finding our way out of the fog created by the pandemic. How long it might take is a question nobody could answer yet. But yes, what we discussed during the webinar, that through the hope and staying optimistic and resorting to the basics, but at the same time strengthening our teams, we can move forward. I think the September-October insights released by IPSOS in the future would be even more helpful, as in Pakistan, the life is resuming back to normalcy. We are grateful to all the attendees who stayed with us throughout this around 2 hours long seminar, and all the expert panelists. Thank you very much, and we look forward to probably seeing you with some insights soon in the next couple of months. Thank you very much, and take care. Hafiz.
Thank you very much, all the participants. Thank you very much. Thank you, Arif, for hosting and moderating the session. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Take
Bye
care.
for now.
Bye.
Bye.